Friday, 11:22 p.m. EST. What is up, guys? What is up? Yes, I know it is a late live stream, and it's just late because today is just late, guys. But as I always say, it's about obedience, not perfection, and most of all, progression, not perfection. So I'm here because I have to be, y'all. I have to be here because I'm dedicated to this process. And yeah, we stream live over here on the channel every single day except Sunday. So today's the Friday stream. Today's going to be a news night to where I'm going to put you guys on to 3 different topics that I am going to also react to tomorrow. I might not react to all 3 of these tomorrow, like in this order. I might add 1 or 2 because it's a Saturday, and on the Saturday live streams, we tend to have a little bit more fun because it's our last day. But definitely there'll probably be at least 2 in here that I'll react to. So first up on the list, guys, I'm going to go through the menu as per usual. Shout out to Forbes breaking news. It says markets are crashing. Reporters grill Secretary Marco Rubio about Trump tariffs. So if you guys aren't aware, not yesterday, April 2nd, President Trump's global tariffs went, President Trump's tariffs went global. So what he's going to charge to other countries that we weren't already charging went out. Any retaliatory tariffs will go into effect as of April 2nd, which means whatever a country puts on us because of our tariffs, it will be reciprocal to whatever they put. So President Trump said in his speech, basically whatever they charge, we charge. It kind of works like that now. So that's what the reciprocal tariffs look like. And a reporter did ask him this. They said, so if a country puts a 25% tariff on us because of our tariffs, in that event, does that mean that now the United States will put an extra 25% on them, which now will be a 50% tariff instead of 25%? And President Trump did confirm that. So we know as of April 2nd, that will also go into effect. So then we'll switch gears a little bit and jump over to Yahoo Finance. Kevin O'Leary on tariffs. China doesn't play by the rules. And we know that, no, China does not. So right here, at least for the first shot, we could see Canada, 25% tariff on U.S.-made vehicles. China, can I see it? I can't see the percentage. Let me see. Wow. Okay, so Canada, 25% tariff on U.S.-made vehicles. China, 34% tariff on all U.S. goods. And President Trump did do this. It was very subjective. It was based on what the country was doing. I personally thought he was gracious. I said he went in at 50% with a 50% perspective, meaning that all the numbers on the small chart that he showed to us, you literally did not see a 5 in front of any of those numbers. So he was not at 50% for any tariff. 49% sure. If you want to round it off, then you can say he was at 50%. But he went in with the 50% perspective in the sense where if countries were at 64% tariff on us, he might have charged them 32%, right? I thought this was gracious because he could have went in and he could have been like, okay, you guys are at 64. I'm going to match you at 64. Or I'm going to double you and we're going to go to 128. But he didn't even do those things. I thought he went in gracious with it. But like I said, people who don't understand tariffs and don't have just, I guess you could say, a topical type of knowledge for just economic processes. They're going to say, regardless of what President Trump does, they hate tariffs. They're mad about tariffs. So we're not going to be able to change everybody's mind. But nonetheless, I still feel like he went in pretty fair. And then we'll switch gears and go over to Pierre Poilievre. It says, I joined Ben Moroni to talk about my plan to stand up to Trump and put Canada first for a change. So those of you who don't know, Canada is my most second watch country on this channel. They're usually in my top 3, so I do my best to keep up with Canadian news. I personally, right now, am a fan of Pierre Poilievre, so I am following him. I think Canada is going to be doing their election on April 28th, so I do follow Pierre. I really hope that Canada votes more conservative this time around, at least for the sake of their country and the sovereignty of it. But Not the biggest fan of Mark Carney, if I'm transparent with you guys, but let's see what happens around April 28th. Then we'll end the live stream with a clip from Cliff Buell. Megachurch pastor gives away $50,000, but that's not all. So this is Pastor Anthony Phillips. Those of you who aren't familiar with him, he's from 2819 Church. Those numbers come from the Bible verse in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Where Jesus gives the command to go gather disciples. So, with that being said, guys, it's late on a Friday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Karen Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. Guys, while you're in the chat, chat, do me a favor, hit the like button for me, please. So, I'm going to go ahead and start this live stream. I'm not going to sit in here for the whole entire live stream like I normally do because it is news night. So, a lot of it I will just have you guys watching. Because again, tomorrow we're gonna come back, revisit, react to some of this and some new stuff. So let's watch. Let's see here. Pyro Gaming, what's up? How you doing, man? Thanks for stopping by. Do me a favor, hit that like button, guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by. What's up? Mo R, what's up? How you doing? Carla, hello. How you doing? Pyro Gaming, what's up? Hey, can I pray for you? Let's see. I really hope you know that Jesus loves you, and I just let me know how I can pray for you. Pyro, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Yes, you can pray for me. I always want brothers and sisters in Christ to pray for me. You could pray for clarity for me. You could pray for safety for my family for me. You can pray for consistency for me. So yeah, I appreciate all those things. I'm not afraid to publicly say yes to prayer. Someone can pray for me. That would be a crazy thing to reject. The Cool Boy, what's up? How you doing? Should I sub? Yes, you should sub because I live stream every single day over here except for Sunday. I do take my day off. But yeah, we're always up in here every single day except Sunday. Politics, conservatism, liberalism, in real life, game shows, whatever people really ask me to react to, I usually kind of just take a look at it. But for the most part, I try to stay like in a political, sometimes you could say religion sector. We usually fall somewhere around there. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and start this clip because I don't want to keep you guys on too long. That's why I only picked 3 clips tonight. Tomorrow, when we're back around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, we'll probably be live for about an hour and a half because I'll probably be reacting to about 5 or 6 clips on a Saturday, and that's our last day for the week. So let's see what Marco Rubio says. Secretary Marco Rubio speaks with reporters at NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium.
Markets are crashing around the world for the second day in a row. The consensus is that the federal tariffs were much higher than expected, and based on economic formulas that people do not understand. What is your reaction, and what is the impact on Europeans? You want them to spend more on defense, which they're agreeing to finally, but how can they do that when their economies are crashing and they are now...
No, their economies are not crashing. The markets are reacting. No, their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules. So I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States. We have to be a country that think we're the largest consumer market in the world, and yet the only thing we export is services. And we need to stop that. We need to get back to a time when we're a country that can make things, and to do that, we have to reset the global order of trade.
And the other part of my question.
Well, the worst thing is to leave it the way it is forever. I mean, just can't continue. We can't continue to be a country that doesn't make things. We have to be able to make things to provide jobs for Americans. That's it. It's that simple. China is an example. I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, they don't consume anything. All they do is export and flood and distort markets, in addition to all the tariffs and barriers they put in place. So the president rightly has concluded that the current status of global trade is bad for America and good for a bunch of other people, and he's going to reset it, and he's absolutely right to do it.
These are the places where I've said that I wish we have had more understanding from countries, but we're not necessarily going to get understanding, right? Because President Trump said it. He said, who would get mad because we are charging them less when it comes to tariffs, but they're going to get mad because they weren't being charged anything. And he's absolutely right about that. So that's why I said I thought that he went in pretty fairly. You know, I know some people were worried about him being a tyrant and they thought, oh, he's going to go crazy with these tariffs. But people don't understand, like, there are countries that are taking grotesquely advantage of the United States when it comes to tariffs. So I thought he went in pretty fair. He went in with a 50% perspective. He's resetting the baseline. The United States wasn't charging many countries anything, and some world leaders were transparent with Trump about that and said, yeah, we kind of know it's unfair. So for the American people to be getting mad at the president, you know, because of the tariffs, and they don't understand tariffs, I think we should take the time first to gather that knowledge and then reassess the situation, because if anything, President Trump helped the country because we were doing pretty bad when it comes to trade.
IRS e-file is now open. Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free.
Prime Minister of Greenland, the Prime Minister of Denmark, which at this point owns Greenland, so Denmark, a NATO ally, is saying that it's unacceptable that one country cannot annex another country.
Well, no one's annexed anything. It's going to be up to Greenlanders. The Vice President made that clear. He's going to respect the self-determination of Greenlanders. So at some point, the Greenlanders have made clear that they want to be independent of Denmark. So that's Denmark should focus on the fact that the Greenlanders don't want to be a part of Denmark. That's what they should focus on. We didn't give them that idea. They've been talking about that for a long time. Whenever they make that decision, they'll make that decision. And then what we're not going to do is let China come in now and say, offer them a bunch of money and become, you know, dependent on China.
The president said he would not rule out using military force against Denmark, a NATO ally.
No, he said he would not rule out, no. He said he would not rule out, he said, I'm not going to rule out anything if Greenland is encroached upon by a foreign power like a China or Russia or anybody else. But it doesn't matter, because Greenlanders are going to make a decision. They're the ones that want to get away from Denmark. They're the ones that want to be independent. Not us. We didn't come up with that idea. They did. And if they make that decision, then the United States would stand ready, potentially, to step in and say, okay, we can create a partnership with you. We're not at that stage, but that's what the Vice President made clear last week in his visit there. His statement was very abundantly clear. He said, we will respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland. People of Greenland, and they're the ones that want to leave Denmark. That wasn't our idea.
All right, well, the second question here, Missy from Washington Post.
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to ask you about the Russia-Ukraine negotiations. Can you give us tell us about the American assessment of the conditions that Russia put forward regarding the Black Sea ceasefire talks, and also the British and French foreign ministers said this morning that Putin was dragging his feet. Do you agree with that?
Maybe, I mean, he might be. We don't know yet. We're going to find out fairly soon. I mean, look, here's what the president wanted to do. He wants to end this war, and he wanted to test it very early in his administration. Is it possible to end this war on terms that are acceptable, obviously, to both sides? Because you can't end a war unless both sides agree. And that's what we're in the process of finding out. We will know soon enough, in a matter of weeks, not months, whether Russia is serious about peace or not. I hope they are. It would be good for the world if that war ended. But obviously, we have to test that proposition. So we're working through that process. We had a visitor, Mr. Carrell, was here this week. Had a chance to sit down with him. He met with others. He'll take some messages back, and the message is the United States needs to know whether you're serious or not about peace. Ultimately, Putin will have to make that decision. The Russian Federation will have to make that decision. I think the Ukrainians have shown a willingness to enter, for example, into a complete ceasefire to create space for negotiation. At some point here, fairly soon, not 6 months from now, you know, the Russians and Putin will have to make a decision about whether they're serious or peace or not, and I hope they are serious. So it would be good for the world if that were.
What is your assessment of the Russian conditions that were put forward? And also, Dmitry said, following his talks with Mr. Witkoff yesterday, that the U.S. and Russia might resume direct flights as maybe a confidence-building measure. Do you support that? So that
I haven't heard anything about direct flights. I can tell you, but I don't know who's going to fly, and I can saw these people are sanctioned. But I would just tell you that the thing I would point to you is this. We're going to wait and see. The Russians know our position in terms of wanting to end the war, and we will know from their answers very soon whether they are serious about proceeding with real peace or whether it's a delay tactic. It's a delay tactic, the president's not interested in that. If this is dragging things out, President Trump's not going to fall into the trap of endless negotiations about negotiations. We won't know soon enough whether or not Russia's serious about peace. If they are, that'll be great, and we can move towards peace. If they're not, then we'll have to reevaluate where we stand and what we do moving forward about it. But we'll be in no different a position than we are today, or we were when he took office. He wanted to know early in his administration, is peace possible? We're testing to see if the Russians are interested in peace. Their actions, not their words, their actions will determine whether they're serious or not, and we intend to find that out sooner rather than later.
What about their conditions?
Which conditions?
They put forward additional conditions after, the Black Sea.
Yeah, so again, I mean, this is part of the back and forth of these sorts of things. I've had phone calls with foreign leaders, and then I read the readout, and it's like, oh, we said, no, you never, they said something to me they never said. I guess it's part of the game in this place or whatever, but look, bottom line is, to me, at the end of the day, what's going to matter here is whether we're going to move towards peace or not. If peace is real, we will know soon enough. If they're not interested in peace, we will know soon enough, and we'll make decisions on the basis. I hope they are real. There are some promising signs, there are some troubling signs. It's not going to be easy. No one ever said this would be easy, but we're going to find out sooner rather than later, and let's just say I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful. I need to be hopeful that peace is possible and that the Russians are serious about peace. We want them to be serious about peace. And hopefully they are, but we'll know sooner rather than later.
Reuters. Hi, sorry, I'm back here.
Your last name's Reuters? Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Go ahead.
On the 5% defense spending target, have you received pushback to this idea while you've been here this week? And you mentioned yesterday up to 5% with your language. What do you mean by up to 5%?
Well, I said up to a path of getting up to 5% at some point. I'm not saying overnight, but to get to that point. We think that's what NATO allies need to be spending for NATO to face the threats that it itself has identified and articulated. Here's the good news. The good news is everyone generally, with a couple exceptions, are spending more on defense today than they were 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's positive. That trend needs to continue. So the trend lines are good, but they need to continue. But this is not about spending. Okay? This is not about money necessarily. This is about capability. In order for NATO to be stronger, it needs partners that are stronger. Okay? The United States commits a lot to NATO and continues to. We are as involved in NATO today as we have ever been, and we intend to continue to be. But it has to be a real alliance, and that means that our alliance partners have to increase their own capabilities. So hopefully 2 things have led to that. The first is the war in Ukraine, I think, has woken up a lot of people on the continent about real threats and real war. And the other is, I think, the pressure and the statements of President Trump that have been pretty consistent about increasing their spending. So this whole trajectory of more defense spending began, I believe, back in 2017, 2018, under President Trump's first term. We want that trend to continue, and we're hoping when the leaders meet in The Hague that there'll be further and firmer commitments in that direction. I think it's beneficial to the alliance. The stronger our partners in NATO are, the more capable our partners in NATO are, the stronger NATO is, and everybody should be in favor of that.
And sorry, just to follow up, so will you try and get the official target as 5% rather than 2%, and will the U.S. commit to 5%?
Sure, we're heading there now. I mean, we're going to have to spend more on national security because we have a global footprint. And that's the point that I think has been made and missed in a lot of places. Okay, the United States has Indo-Pacific alliance obligations as well that we've made. We are currently involved in opening up the Red Sea so that global shipping for everyone, including our European partners, can become possible again. We're engaged in counter-drug and counter-gang interdictions in the Western Hemisphere. There's obviously all sorts of issues going on in different parts of the world, including we're concerned about a resurgence of terrorist cells, whether it's in Africa or in the Middle East. So the U.S. has these global obligations, and we have China that's undergoing the largest, most expansive peacetime military expansion in history. So we need to confront all of these things, and we're engaged in all of those things. So we're going to have to increase defense spending in our country. I think our commitment to NATO isn't just 3-something% spending of GDP. It's sustained over an extraordinary period of time, and that continues. So, look, I think our partners know they need to do more. They've all indicated they want to do more. They've begun to do more, and that trend needs to continue.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned that you met with Kirill Dmitriev as well. In order to stop them from dragging their feet and dragging this on, is there anything that you said, perhaps not threats, but is there anything that you said you wanted to see concretely from the Russian side in order to
peace? We want to see peace.
But specifics in terms of getting to the ceasefire first and then the negotiations
I
there?
mean, peace means you stop shooting at each other. I mean, it's as simplistic as that. Now, obviously, look, there's all kinds of conditions for a final peace, and you have to work with both sides. And I said from the beginning, The only way a war ends in a negotiated settlement, if it's not an unconditional surrender, then it is both sides make concessions. We're not going to prejudge what those concessions are, because those concessions will depend on what Ukraine will accept and Russia will accept. But we have to make concrete steps towards peace. What we're not interested in, and I'm not accusing them of this, I'm just telling you what we're not interested in is negotiations about negotiations. That we're not going to continue this forever. So none of it was threatening. I think it was more an explanation of, this is our timeline, and at some point, it'll be clear whether you want peace or you don't want peace. And that time is coming. It's pretty short. At the same time, as we now have seen, members of Congress have begun to file bills to increase sanctions. So there is going to be growing pressure from Capitol Hill to impose sanctions that we're not going to be able to stop. If in fact we're not making progress towards peace, all these factors have been explained in the nicest way possible. Hopefully he'll take that message back to Moscow, and it'll make clear that we need to begin to see real progress, or we'll have to conclude that they're not interested in peace. But let's hope they are, because I think it'll be better for everyone.
Are more talks planned?
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house no matter what condition it's in. If you need to sell your house for any reason, click the button under this video to see if my offer is right for you. We make the process of selling your house easy and simple. No commissions, no fees. We'll buy your house.
No, we're not selling.
Well, we need to hear an answer to this. I mean, talks are only, we're going to have talks as long as talks are about something. It can't be talks about talks. At the end, I think initially it was important to talk because we hadn't talked to them in a long time, but now we've reached the stage where we need to make progress. And if we're not making progress towards peace, then we have a set of factors that we have to take into account. But hopefully we are going to make progress towards peace. I remain optimistic that we can. It'll be hard, it'll be difficult, but I'm optimistic that we can.
So, Secretary, the Myanmar earthquake, normally in these kinds of events you would have up to 200 Americans with sniffer dogs, special equipment, experts in their field, saving lives on the ground. This has not happened because of this dismantling of US.
Well, that and the fact that it's run by a military junta that doesn't like us. So it's hard for us to move around in this country.
I say it's these events are always not political. They go into Syria, for example, when the Turkey Syria earthquake. So they can act.
Well, we're not the government of the world. No, we'll provide humanitarian assistance, just like everybody else does, and we will do it the best we can. But we also have other needs we have to balance that against. We're not walking away from humanitarian assistance. But again, I go back to a lot of other rich countries in the world. They should all be pitching in. We're going to do our part. We already have people there. We'll have more people there. We'll help as much as we can. It's not the easiest place to work. Okay, they have a military junta that doesn't like us, doesn't necessarily allow us to operate in that country the way we wanted to. That would have impeded our response no matter what. That said, we are willing to continue to help in the humanitarian crisis. Other countries need to do so as well. China's a very rich country. India's a rich country. There are a lot of other countries in the world that everyone should pitch in. I don't think it's fair to assume that the United States needs to continue to share the burden, 60-70% of humanitarian aid around the world. We will be in the business of humanitarian aid, but we have other priorities as well that are national interest priorities of the United States, and we're going to align all those to be properly balanced.
Soft power. I mean, all of the experts in this have said the reason it's not because of the politics of Myanmar, but it's because of the dismantling of USA you simply couldn't deploy.
Yeah, I don't listen to these so-called experts. They're not real experts. These are so-called experts. These are people that are part of that NGO industrial complex. No, these are people that make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in these NGOs all over the world that stand up and they get flooded with U.S. taxpayer money, and then we have to spend $100 million to get $10 million to people. We're not doing that anymore. Okay? We have stopped. We are no longer going to spend $100 million to get $10 million to recipients. We're not going to fund these global NGOs all over the world that are living off of this. We're not doing it. We are prepared to help and work with governments and appropriate NGOs on the ground that are delivering assistance. We will be there and we will be helpful. There are a lot of other rich countries. They should also pitch in and help. And some of them are and some of them are not. But we are going to do our part. We're going to continue to do our part. But it's going to be balanced with all of the other interests we have as a country. We are not a nation. We are the richest country in the world, but our resources are not unlimited. They are not unlimited, and we have a massive national debt, and we have many other priorities as well, and it's time to recalibrate all of that. So we'll be there, we'll be helpful as much as we can. We've got other things we have to take care of as well, but we care deeply about what's happened there. So we have a cooperative government.
Mr. Secretary, the Middle East was part of your discussion here in NATO, especially that you find support from members toward your policy on airstrikes and Houthis, and your maximum pressure policy toward Iran.
Yeah, I mean, on the Houthis, everybody wants to get their ships through the Red Sea. We're the only ones doing anything about it, but everyone wants to, get their ships through there. As I said, we've done the world a great favor by taking on this band of criminals. who have unfortunately sophisticated weaponry that they can use to, I mean, they've attacked with 150, 160 merchant vessels, 174 times they've attacked the United States Navy. So I think the world should be grateful to the United States for being involved in this and doing this. Everyone thanks us for it. I understand these nations have limited capabilities despite being very rich countries. Nobody else can project power there and do this. But that said, we think that mission is going to bear fruit, and it's necessary. We can't have abandoned criminals controlling that. In the case of Iran, I don't know of any country in the world that's excited about Iran ever having a nuclear weapons capability. Some are more forceful about it than others. We've had talks about that. As you know, the president would like to figure out what's going to happen there, but he's also made it clear that there's not going to be a nuclear armed Iran. That's not going to happen under his watch.
Mr. Secretary, what's your message to foreign citizens who may be afraid to come to the United States because they're concerned about potentially being detained over some minor administrative error, because they might have something on their phone like criticism of the president or of the Israel-Gaza conflict, and they don't want to come into the United States now?
No, first of all, those people that have their phones looked at and so forth, and I'll refer you to CBP that go through their processes. But generally, it's people that have been flagged coming in for a reason. I would say that you're not coming to the United States to join a Hamas protest or to come here and tell us about how right Hamas is, or to tell us about, stir up conflict on our campuses and create riots in our street and vandalize our universities. Then you have nothing to worry about. But thousands and thousands of people come into the U.S. every single day to conduct business, to travel, to do all sorts of visit relatives. It happens every day. It's very commonplace, and nobody has a problem. I mean, if you're coming here to create problems, you're probably going to have a problem, and I think that's a good thing. If you're coming here to create problems, not here in the United States, you're probably going to have a problem. Yeah, but we're not going to continue to be stupid enough to let people into our country who are coming here to tear things up. Not going to happen.
Mr. Secretary, have the Russians done anything concrete to make you encouraged that they are truly interested in peace? I mean, you talk about timeline. I know you're not going to give a specific timeline, but are you talking weeks? Or are you talking months?
I think we're talking weeks, probably. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that needs to happen here in the next few weeks in order for this to be real. In terms of concrete, they've agreed to certain things. I mean, I think their things are not striking now that they were before. Obviously, both sides claim that the ceasefire has been violated, as typical of ceasefires like this. But that said, not concrete in terms of are we closer to peace? We're closer to peace simply because we're talking to both sides, but we're not closer to peace because we have a deal on our hands to end this conflict. But we're going to know soon enough. That's my point I make everybody. People go, oh, well, Putin, you can't trust him. It's not about trusting Putin. It's not about trusting anybody. This is about actions. If you're interested in peace, you stop fighting. And you lay out the conditions by which you're willing to end a war. And they have to be reasonable conditions, right? Not crazy stuff. If you're interested in peace, that's what you do. If you're not interested in peace, then you sort of drag it out and you come up with excuses and you pull, and we know that, and we're not going to get pulled into that. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's hope it, let's be optimistic that that's not the direction we're going. We're prepared if it is, but let's hope that we're not heading in the direction of this is just a delayed tactic.
All right, one more and then we wrap up.
Don't you guys want to go home? The one that came?
He said, don't you guys want to go home?
That they're going to do what, I'm sorry?
The Russians are preparing to start another military campaign.
Well, then we'll know they're not interested in peace.
And at this very moment, they're targeting energy sites, in reaction.
Targeting what?
Energy sites in Ukraine.
Well, again, I get that means they're violating the ceasefire. That's not a good sign, But I think I would tell you this: that ultimately, this is a war right now. Things are going to be blowing up in Ukraine and inside of Russia because there's still a war going on. That's what we're trying to end. Okay, if we have a true ceasefire, which is what we want, a complete ceasefire, nothing should be blowing up. But the Russians didn't agree to that. They wanted a partial. And then obviously, when you get into these partials, it's one of the reasons why we didn't push for a partial. We'll take it because it's better than nothing. But one of the reasons why we didn't push for a partial, because there's always disputes about what are you hitting or what you're not hitting. But in the end, this is still a war, and we want it to stop. The fact that religious sites are being hit, or energy sites are being hit, or civilian sites are being hit, that's why war is a bad thing. And that's why the president wants to end it. As far as them conducting another campaign, well, then that'll be a very clear sign. Right? If all of a sudden we wake up tomorrow and the Russians are launching a massive offensive, then I think that's a pretty clear sign they're not interested in peace. That's going to happen here. Let's hope they say so. We want to know whether they want to do peace or not. And if they do, then there's a way there, and we're willing to help. If they're not, then it's good to know early, so we can adjust our policies accordingly.
All right.
I think it's interesting the way the media tries to like twist
Alright,
things.
thank you guys.
You don't like the way Marco Rubio answers a question. I mean, here's what I can appreciate. He stays the course while he's answering a question. And they're trying to get him to say something. He's like, listen, they essentially, to me, I feel like they wanted him to say, there is no way that there can be peace with Russia. But he's saying, listen, if there is a way that, if there's a pathway to peace, then we're going to take it. That it's there, But if it's not there, if we turn on the news tomorrow and they're obviously doing some type of massive attack, he's like, then they obviously aren't interested in any type of peace at that point. So I can appreciate, he stays the course when he answers the question, when he defends President Trump. And I think the cabinet in general does a good job at doing this, defending President Trump, kind of sticking, to the course. They seem to have a good synergy within the cabinet. All seem to be on the same page for the most part. I mean, I really try not to pay attention to the media when they're like, oh, like the latest headline, Elon and Trump are due to part ways, or Elon and Trump parting ways. And it's like, it's so hilarious when you read the comments because they're like, oh, to think a temporary position is actually temporary. What do you know? And it's like, yeah, like President Trump kind of has went on record to say this, not kind of, but has, and so has Elon, that once his efforts at Doge have been completed, that he will be stepping away as a special government employee, right? Which can be put in place by EO, so by the president. We know that. Caroline Levitt went on record, the White House press secretary, to say that yes, President Trump and Elon Musk have both publicly went on record to say that once his efforts with Doge have been completed, he would step away from being a special government employee. So I'm not really sure like what the media gets like, I don't know what they get out of doing that, but at the same time I do. Like, they're divisive, they cause confusion, they cause an uproar, and that's what they like. And that's the reason why over definitely the last decade, but the last 5 years, we've seen a drift, a massive drift of people away from mainstream media. So switching gears a little bit, guys, we're going to go over to Yahoo Finance. Kevin O'Leary on tariffs. China doesn't play by the rules. Yeah, they usually don't. So let's see what they have to say here.
China and Canada both unveiling their own countermeasures against.
So this says, just because YouTube might have flipped it, so you guys might not be able to see it clearly. It says Canada, 25% tariff on U.S. made vehicles. China, 34% tariff on all U.S. goods. China imposing 34% tariff on all U.S. goods.
U.S. tariffs. China will enact a 34% levy on all U.S. imports, and Canada planning to tariff all U.S. made vehicles at 25%. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney calling President Trump's protectionist policies a tragedy for global trade.
Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also the new reality. We must respond with both purpose and force.
Joining us now to discuss what's next in tariff negotiations, Kevin O'Leary, O'Leary Ventures Chairman. Kevin, great to have you back with us. Thank you for making the time. I want to start on these tariffs. The market is on track right now for its worst weekly performance since March of 2020. How do you continue to be an advocate for these tariffs, given the sell-off we're seeing, given that I have had every source on our show this morning say that these tariffs will be causing a recession in the United States?
No,
they don't know that yet. They don't know how long the tariff's going to be on. We've never done this before. We've never taken on the entire globe. Usually it's done in trade agreements with specific countries, such as NAFTA, which was Canada and Mexico, or European Union situation. This is unique, over 60 countries. Now, there's two aspects to these tariffs. Number one is reciprocality against tariffs from one country to another based on products and services that are specific. So if you're charging a 20% tariff in India, it's going to be reciprocated in the United States. And those go away pretty quickly. That actually leads to fair trade. The more complex aspect of these negotiations are around the idea of trade imbalances. And so when you put on tariffs to try and fix trade imbalance, it's difficult because the largest economy on earth is the United States. So really you're starting a behemoth negotiation, and it's happening in every country. You highlighted Canada, but you might as well talk about Britain or even Switzerland, where I am right now, where they have over 30% tariffs imposed 48 hours ago. And so you can assume that behind the scenes are two spheres of negotiations. One is, let's try and reduce the imbalance of trade by buying more stuff from the United States. That's one signal. And the other, which is very easy to fix, is simply remove all tariffs. If you're going to have reciprocal tariffs at 20%, 30%, 40%, just get rid of them, bring them down to zero, where they have over 30%.
I just want to go back here so you guys can see it because I know YouTube flipped it, so you can't see it. That's the U.S. market, so they're showing that they're all down right now, which that's no surprise. So it says 34% country specific tariffs announced will go into effect April 9th, 2025. So today's the 4th. So it says 34% on China, 20% on EU, 24% on Japan, 32% on Taiwan. Trump tariffs a tragedy. Canadian Prime Minister, Canada unveils countermeasure against U.S. autos. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the next one here because I know they flipped that one too. Then this one says, country-specific tariffs announced will go into effect April 9, 2025. 46% on Vietnam, 26% on India, 31% on Switzerland, 10% on UK. Markets in turmoil amid trade war. China retaliates with 34% tariff on U.S. imports. You know, I agree with Kevin O'Leary. It's not like we've never done this before, but it's been a really long time because President Trump talks about tariffs and he talks about how prosperous it made the United States around the 1800s, and this is something that can be actually fact-checked. I like his approach though when he says like, you know, they don't know that, and I said that. I said no, it won't, but he said they don't know that. You know, it's not something we've done before, and they still have to watch and see. They have to give it some time, and this is something I've said over and over again. Like it has to be given some time because it's not something. The way President Trump specifically is attacking it, it's not something that has been done before. So, yeah, at least not in a very long time. So it needs time, and some people are very critical of time, and they don't really have patience. So that's why we kind of see some people in more of an upward than others. But I just think that we need to give it time. I think we need to give it time. And the reason why I've been really short on that is because the man's only been in presidency, a little over 90 days. It hasn't been long enough, you know. Plenty of news anchors have said it. Jesse Waters probably said it the best, you know, Joe Biden and Kevin O'Leary. Lots of people. Joe Biden had 4 years, you know, to do a lot of some of the damage that was done to the economy. So in just 90 days, you know, President Trump is not going to be able to, you know, just do an overturn of that much catastrophic behavior in just 90 days or a little bit more than that. So we got to be a little bit more graceful than that and just give it some time, guys.
What tool do you suggest they do when nothing else has
Well, I'm not the
worked?
president. It's not my job.
Well, exactly. So let him do his work. China's different than all the other countries.
But it's not
China has to be
working, right?
dealt with. Look, I'm having lots of problems with China, as are millions of other companies in the United States that try to do business there. They do not play by the rules. They're going to have to start doing it pretty soon. That's a different conversation. You want to talk about the markets correcting? Yes, they are. By the way, markets correct every 18 months up to 20%. You're watching it happen right now. It's not pleasant. You can't blame just the tariffs for this. These have been very expensive markets now for almost 18 months. Now they're having a correction. I think what matters is this a recession signal, yes or no? And how long will these tariffs be on? I would say 50% of these tariffs across these 60 countries will be negotiated pretty quickly, including the Canadian situation you made details on. Canada's different because they're in the middle of an election. Carney's not an elected official. No. He has no mandate from the Canadian people. He's just an interim Prime Minister when they threw out Justin Trudeau a few weeks ago. He's got to get elected first, so he's got to say anything he possibly can to try and distract Canadian voters from the fact that his party bankrupt the country. 25% of Canadians live in poverty. They have had no GDP growth for 10 years. There's no investment capital in Canada anymore, and the dollar's lost 41% of its value. Canadians can't go to the United States because they can't afford it under Carney's leadership in his party. So those are different issues too. There's a lot of things going on.
And all of those facts that Justin O'Leary just listed, the Canadian dollar dropping 41%, 25% of Canadians are living in poverty. All of that stuff happened and declined even more so under Justin Trudeau. So I've said it already. vote for Pierre. You guys need to go more conservative. If your economy is in that much turmoil as you say it is, then you should already know that a liberal is not what Canada needs.
At the same time,
a lot of things that economists tell me are not fixable via tariffs, but I am curious from your perspective then, what?
And that's even if you are liberal. It doesn't matter. I say it all of the time. I vote how I want to vote. If you know that your country is in dire need right now, you have to vote the right way. It doesn't matter if for 50 years, 20 years, 15, 10, 5 years, you've always voted liberal. It doesn't matter. You have to vote for what the country needs in the moment, at the moment, and for the person who aligns most with, I want to say your values, but that's subjective depending on if you're a believer or not. But nonetheless, you guys know, believer or not, if you know that the conservative is going to be able to conserve the country and the country is in bad sitting right now, then you know a liberal is not what's needed.
Why do you think that we are moving towards a negotiation where these tariffs are not going to be as bad as they seem right now, at least for financial markets? What is it that gives you confidence that there is going to be a negotiation reached?
Because there's a good reason to do it. I mean, you got to distinguish the noise versus the signal. I've said this countless times about Trump. Let's take the Canadian situation, which we've been talking about. If you combine those economies, I'm not saying buying the country, but if you combine the economies, which seems impossible to do given the rhetoric and what's going on right now, but the truth is, the signal is it would be much stronger against China if there were no tariffs between Canada and the United States and they had a common currency and they protected the northern border, not the 49th parallel. Now, the Canadians know that's worth it because 75% of their output has been sold to the United States for over 120 years. 17 states call Canada the #1 trading partner. 28 states, in addition to those 17, #2 trading partner is Canada. So it'd be economic suicide not to work this out. The obvious answer is to remove all tariffs, and that will happen, my guess is, right after the election when the Canadians make their choice about who they want to lead them. That person will fly to Washington immediately and start negotiations, which I would call NAFTA 3. But right now, that's not happening because Carney's trying to use this whole Trump issue as fulcrum to try and distract Canadians away from the facts that he wiped out the country. Maybe he'll get elected, maybe he won't. Nobody knows right now. But nothing's going to happen on the Canadian situation until the election's over in just over 5 weeks.
So let's talk about the Canadian citizen reaction, because we've already seen evidence of Canadian citizens boycotting American products. We've heard from CEOs that they are concerned about that. Even airline CEOs and the governor of New York being concerned about Canadians not wanting to travel to the United States. Are you getting that pushback from your fellow citizens in Canada?
No. You can understand if you've got the froth and rhetoric around an election cycle, why you get some of that. And some Canadians are unhappy, there's no question about it, but Canadians are not stupid. They understand the economic advantage of working and selling to the United States and having no tariff whatsoever. The behemoth economy is a golden jewel of an idea, and everybody gets that joke. Americans do not hate Canadians. Canadians do not hate Americans. Politicians have lots of rhetoric when they're trying to get elected. That's what they're doing here. All of this will pass too. What drives everybody long term are economic interests. And that's what really you should focus on here. This will pass. Things will calm down. More rational minds will sit at a table across from each other in about 6 weeks in Washington and Ottawa.
More rational than the president?
At the end of the day, the president's not an idiot either. Neither is Ludnick or Burgum or any of those people negotiating these deals right now. You have to look at the economic opportunity. They're not idiots. They're negotiating. This is a giant, nasty negotiation. A little bit of politics and a little dash-will-do of politics because of the crazy timing of the Canadian election. Trump has a 4-year mandate. At least 2 of them are in a majority situation. If he's going to do all this volatile stuff, which he's doing right now, he's got to do it now because he may not have a majority mandate after the midterms. So that's why you're getting such an accelerated pace of policy. These tariffs, as I said earlier, 50% of them can be easily melted away to a reciprocal of 0 tariffs. And then this trade deficit is a trickier situation country by country. The only reason there's a deficit in Canada is the fact that so much oil is imported from Alberta into the U.S. economy. If you took away oil, Canadians buy more goods and services from the United States than vice versa. There is no trade deficit ex oil. So that is obvious too. The numbers are the numbers. It will get resolved. And I think calmer minds will prevail after the election is over in Canada.
Kevin, I want to end on TikTok. Both President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance saying a deal to sell the app will be reached before this weekend's deadline. And then on Air Force One, President Trump said tariffs on China could be part of that negotiation. Take a listen.
Welder cries out with his bucket in his hand. My check's a little short, need it now, I'm the man. Did you clock in?
We have the situation with TikTok where China will probably say, we'll approve a deal, will you do something on the tariff? The tariffs give us great power to negotiate.
So if tariffs and TikTok are now getting tied by the president, where does that put your bid for TikTok in terms of your negotiation power? Where does your bid stand right now?
Well, there's many bids. There's no question there's a deal for TikTok on the table, and that will get one thing with certainty. Tomorrow before midnight, an extension, my guess is 90 days. It'll be punted down the road because the details of the TikTok deal are very difficult. Let me explain two big issues. China has not said what they want to do yet. The current idea is to get a copy of the code and make an American version of it. And we're not sure that passes muster with the law. If you can download, anybody in America can go get the Supreme Court order. The top of page 5 makes it very clear you can't use the Chinese algorithm. So what we're going to have to do, if that's the plan, is get an indemnification from Congress or change the law to make it legal to use that. And that would require 51 votes in changing it, and maybe they could slip it into the Reconciliation Act. All of these are unknowns. But right now, the penalty would be about $828 billion. That's $5,000 per user account per 24 hours times 172 million. And no one, no capital stack of any of the syndicates formed can take that risk. So we need clarity on what's allowed and what isn't based on the law that was passed by Congress and the Supreme Court order. Remember, it was 9-0. There was no ambiguity in it. And so somebody has to figure that out and either give financiers, both the debt and equity structures, some kind of indemnification against that penalty coming back. Because remember, that law will last long past Trump's administration. So if you have an ambitious attorney general that perhaps is a Democrat, you'll get sued for $800 billion.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford that. So we've got to solve that problem. We've got to figure that out. So these are the things that we're going to have to get worked out in the next 90 days to get this deal done.
Kevin O'Leary, ladies and gentlemen. You know, one thing I can appreciate that he said, I'm glad that he went on record to say, you know, Canadians don't hate Americans and Americans don't hate Canadians. Because that part is very true. I feel like that part is very true. And I tell you, sometimes the media,
So the president's
they're troublesome for me, man. Like, they really are, because, you know, it's being promoted like that. You see Canadians boycotting a lot of American products and things.
China and Canada both.
You see it kind of like vice versa on the American side.
Christians need to hear this. Everybody.
But not so much. It's just, I don't know. It's just a sad thing to see. But I'm glad he went on record to say that because it's very true.
So the president.
Americans don't hate Canadians and Canadians don't hate Americans. But this is what politicians do, right? They're in midst election. They're running, they're promoting themselves, they're making all of these promises, they're saying what they're going to do. So it's like sometimes they got to throw some countries under the bus, whether they're allies or not. We know that this is just politics. We've seen this historically. And honestly, the only word for it is that it sucks. I don't like it because plenty of times I've gone on record on my platform to say that, you know, Canadians have the right to stand up for themselves. They have a right to have, their country has a right to have its sovereignty. You know, they do not have to become a 51st state, but they also have to understand that this has a lot to do with who they're going to select as their prime minister. You know, I saw in one of the comments today, under, I believe it was one of Pierre, no, it was under one of Mark Carney's videos, and it said that Mark Carney, please get it straight. Mark Carney is not the Prime Minister of Canada. He's just the leader of the Liberal Party. Well, no, he is the sitting Prime Minister of Canada right now because that's what your media and every media around the world promotes him as. He might not be an elected official, and an elected official. A shout out to the Simple Investor, Todd. He always talks about that. He says all the time that he has a problem calling Mark Carney a prime minister because he hasn't been elected by the people. He has no mandate by the people. So, when Kevin O'Leary says that, I agree with him 100%. I do. This is what politicians do. And I mean, you even have the former Prime Minister of Britain saying that she's hoping for a Pierre Poilievre win. Like, you literally, because she just is familiar with Mark Carney, how he ran the bank, how he came in and changed the economy of Britain, how they're suffering so badly, and they're one of the most expensive countries in the world right now. And she goes on record to say this, so I just think that we need to be paying attention. So speaking of Pierre, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Shout out to Pierre Poilievre. This is on his channel, actually. His channel has grown a lot since the election. Like, I've been following him for some time. Not on this channel, but on my main channel where I create my content. And I remember when this channel had way less subscribers than what it has right now. So shout out to Pierre. It says, I joined Ben Mulroney to talk about my plan to stand up to Trump and put Canada first for a change. So he's answering some pretty direct questions here. He's pretty transparent here. He's I like the way he interviews, so I thought that I would play this. I've said this time and time again on my channel. Canada is one of my top channels, my top countries on the channel. I would say they are my second most watched country. But you know what? Before I actually switch over to Pierre, I'm going to go to Bill O'Reilly first because I always kind of go in order here. So I usually have the Canadian news right before I jump into the Christian clip. So let's do Bill O'Reilly first. So shout out to Bill O'Reilly. The tariffs that shocked the world. So he's going to do a little bit of breakdown as to why the tariffs were so shocking, what they mean once again, because he's went over this, how people, especially the media, are reacting to the tariffs. So let's take a look. Go Bill.
So the president is correct. The data is there. Foreign nations make far more money from trade with America than we make from them. It's in the trillions of dollars when you add it up. How do they do it? Well, I'm going to walk through that. I'm going to tell you exactly how the countries abroad are screwing us. Why aren't Americans aware of this? Two reasons. The press ignores it. It's too boring, it's too complicated. And we live pretty well here. Despite the bad trade deals, we live pretty well. In fact, we live better than anybody else on the planet. So there isn't an urgency like there is with criminal migrants, for example. Okay? Now, Donald Trump has now become the biggest president disruptor in the history of this republic. He passes Theodore Roosevelt. The turn of the 20th century, Roosevelt went after the robber barons, the monopolies. He tried to crush them. It was a brawl. I write about it in Confronting Evil. These robber barons were as bad as you could possibly get, exploiting American workers. But they employed millions of people. Even though most of those people were being exploited, they got a paycheck. So Roosevelt going after these big shots was not popular. Teddy won. He knocked out a lot of the monopolies in this country. Again, people don't know it. History isn't taught anymore. But when you read Confronting Evil, you'll see, because that is an interesting chapter. So Donald Trump has now wiped Teddy off the face of the map by saying to the world, I'm going to fight you all at once to get better trade agreements. He might win, like Teddy did. It was painful for Teddy, and nobody knew the outcome for a while. Same thing could happen. Donald Trump could get better trade deals here. That could absolutely happen. But in the short term, today, if you were in the stock market, you lost money. I lost money. I bought a little stock today. Not much. I bought a company that I feel a year from now is going to be very prosperous. And I didn't buy many shares. But that company got whacked. I'm not going to tell you what it is because they can't do that. But I bought a little bit today. I still believe in the American economy and that we are going to do well going forward. But in the next few weeks, boy, oh boy. So the president is making a decision to try to catapult himself up to greatness. Because if it all comes true, and manufacturing comes back to the United States, and investment comes back to the United States, the American worker will prosper big time. But if it doesn't come true, it's going to be hard economic times. All right, do we have it? Okay. Now, enter the press. They want Trump to fail, except for Fox News and Newsmax. Everybody else in the press wants Trump to fail. So as soon as the stock market goes down, you get hysteria. Go.
And so they've taken an economy that was actually in pretty decent shape and moving in the right direction, and they are going to turn it upside down, and I think 50-50 into a recession.
Wow, 50-50. Yeah, as you said, companies like Goldman Sachs using the word stagflation, that combination of inflation and slowing growth.
So that's NBC Comcast. It's going to be a recession. It's going to be horrible. You're going to lose your home. Your kids will be out in the street. You know, that. And then people who are not informed, who aren't watching the news or listening to it, they don't know. They just don't. Fear is a great political motivator. Okay? So, prices are raised. This is bad. What Trump is doing is bad. All right. Now, there is a segment, a sliver of information that comes out that is fair. Yeah, that's why this broadcast prospers. Excuse me. Last night on News Nation, I was on with Cuomo as I am every Wednesday, and Geraldo was on too. Geraldo just took his family to Japan. Here's what he said. Go.
I can tell you, we went the length and breadth of the island archipelago, and the big cities like Tokyo and the others. We did not see a single American car on the road in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. Not a Caddy, not a Buick, not a Ford, not a Chevy, not a nothing. We have plenty of Toyotas here in my neighborhood and around the country.
And you won't see American cars in China, in South Korea, in Southeast Asia, in Germany, and most of the rest of Europe. You will not see them, which is why members of the United Auto Workers Union went to the press conference to bolster President Trump yesterday. So American cars are shut out, whereas many of us drive foreign cars. Not me. I never do that. I have a Cadillac. It's 9 years old. It's a good car, and I'm keeping it. All right? I would never buy a foreign car under any circumstances. All right? Because I buy American. Anyway, Rivera told the truth that countries like Japan, which is our big ally, set up a system whereby American cars are so expensive, once they get on the ground in Japan, that no Japanese is going to pay that money. And they do that by tariffs, they do that by taxes, VAT, value-added tax, regulations. Oh, we don't like this tire, and you got to do this, and you got to do it. So they shut up. Is that fair? No, it's not fair. That's the best example I can give you. And then you multiply that by 1,000 American products. Our products go all over the world, but many of them cannot get into the individual countries like India. India makes it almost impossible. Canada, you can't get dairy in there, American dairy. You can't get American crops in there. Okay? Mexico's the same way. They don't want certain product, they slap on all onerous regulations, so you can't get it down there. That's what it's all about. Do we all understand? Raise your hand if you don't. Now, most Americans not watching this broadcast because they're not really seeking information. They don't understand tariffs. I don't want to be arrogant, but they don't. Go out today and just ask anybody, what's this tariff deal all about? Well, we don't like it. Oh, okay, what don't you like? They don't know. So people like that are easily manipulated by the far left hate Trump press. Now, I had to set News Nation straight last night about what the core issue is here as far as Donald Trump's mind. What is in his mind? Roll the tape. It did affect American markets, but not in the way that people think. So let's go to Bernie Sanders. Let's go to the income inequality crew. Well, why do you think there's so much income inequality? Because the high-paying union manufacturing jobs went overseas. And they were replaced by service jobs that don't pay as much, or public service, or whatever. So what Trump clearly said is, I'm going to bring back those manufacturing jobs. People are going to invest in plants in America. That's going to heighten
but that's
the potential to earn money by Americans.
But that's highly speculative.
Okay, it might. I don't think it's highly speculative, but it is speculative. But that's what Trump wants to do. He wants to bring back the jobs that have fled overseas. Apple already said it's going to relocate billions back to the USA from China. The Gulf nations are now pledging $1 trillion infrastructure investment in American manufacturing. So if you are a regular American, all right, and you're trying to earn a living, and you have a choice between getting into a manufacturing plant and earning $75 an hour or driving an Uber, what are you going to take? But the manufacturing jobs have gone to Mexico and China and Southeast Asia because the workers there work for cheap. Some of them are slave workers. In China, they are actually slave workers. So the American companies go, oh, we don't care about American workers. We want to make as much money as possible. We're going over there. Trump wants to stop that. Okay, again, raise your hand if you don't understand it. It's important that you understand what the intent is.
Yeah.
Now, Cuomo goes, speculative. All right. So Trump has one of two choices. He can ignore it like every other president has.
And that's done nothing for us.
Or he can try to fix it.
Exactly.
And he chose to try to fix it. That's where we are. Okay. I think that is about as fair an explanation as you will ever get from any person in the media.
And I'm gonna chop it right there, guys. You know, you can always go to Bill O'Reilly's channel and check it out. But he's right. This is why after, I always say the better part of a decade, but the better part of 5 years, that a lot of people have swayed away from mainstream media, and it's because they're not honest. They're not honest. And Bill does a good job at being fair, you know, especially I like to say in his older years. But he's absolutely right. You know, as far as I said, when people don't take the time to understand this stuff, this is why there's so much confusion and there's an uproar and people are upset. But President Trump has to do what he's doing, because if he doesn't, the trajectory that America's on is not feasible. Elon Musk has said this. President Trump has went on record to say this. And when we don't take the time to learn about what these things are, you know, we're confused about it. We're upset about it. And really, there's not much to be upset about when you're a country that's being totally taken advantage of. And every country has tariffs on you, but you don't even have tariffs on these countries, not even at 5 or 10%. So, I mean, I think, again, I'm not going to stop saying that I think President Trump was pretty gracious with it. I personally do think that. He went in with a 50% mindset, and I think that was gracious of him. He could have went in a lot more, he could have went in hot. You know, he really could have, and I think a lot of people thought he was going to, and he didn't. So now, moving back over, guys, switching gears to, let's give him a shout out, Pierre Poilievre, his channel. I joined Ben Mulroney to talk about my plan to stand up to Trump and put Canada first for a change. So this is an interview that Pierre did with Ben. I thought he was pretty transparent and open during this interview. He has his wife with him. So let's take a look at what Pierre has to say.
Remember those days of traveling with my family? I remember them
Shout out to
entirely
Canada.
fondly. What's it been like?
How old were you?
Oh gosh, first one, 84, I was 8. I was 8 years old. Yeah, and I loved all of it. You know, the staffers became like family. I got to see my dad in the best possible light because it was what he wanted to be doing. And you know, I'm hearing some knocks on social media that people assuming that it's not necessarily a positive. I can speak from lived experience. It's an entirely positive experience. Are the kids responding to it?
They love it. My little guy, Cruz, he loves the excitement, the sound, the noise, and all the adventure. And he helps us with little projects. We did a visit to a pizza shop the other day, and he helped put the mushrooms on the pizza. I ended up almost dropping the pizza on the ground. And our little girl, Valentina, she loves motion. She likes to be moving, physically moving all the time. So a campaign tour is actually quite good for her. Sometimes she gets a little bit overwhelmed by the lights and sounds, and she has to make her way to a quieter place. But it's been, I think, overall, would you say, a good experience for them?
Cruz is now trying to steal your microphone.
Yeah, he's been trying to steal my microphone, so I might have some competition here.
Speaking of family, one of our own, Greg Brady, is running for the Conservatives in Ajax. Are you as impressed with him as a candidate as we are as a colleague?
Yes, and you know, he has an incredible track record and a big following, a big listenership, and he's been pushing the same kind of common sense ideas in his job. So thousands of people already knows where he stands. So when he goes to the door and says, you know, I want to cut your income tax by 15%, they say, well, that sounds like something you've been saying for a long time. When he says that, you know, we're going to lock up the criminals and make our community safe again, they probably say, well, I heard you say that on the radio, so you're probably meaning it when you say it now on my doorstep. So I think he's going to be a great part of our Canada First team.
Now, you made a speech in Toronto today, and before we get to that, I know you were introduced by my sister, who is a minister in the Ontario government.
That's right.
She's also, she endorsed you. She reminded people that Brian Mulroney was one of your first donors. I didn't know that.
$500.
I haven't asked her specifically about how she ended up in that position, because I actually wanted to ask you. She works for the Ford government. A lot has been made about call them not the best relations between the federal party and the Ontario analog. Is this a signal of things changing on that front?
I think it's a signal of a great friendship. Caroline and I have known each other for a number of years. We talk from time to time about economic matters. Obviously, she has had numerous big economic portfolios, transport, treasury board, and the list goes on. And I think we share the same values, good value for taxpayers' money, letting people keep more of their paycheck, getting the red tape out of the way to build some more homes so our youth can actually put a roof overhead. And she was saying that her kids listen to a lot of my social media posts, and they're part of the generation that's really rallied around Conservatives. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
We were the old guys party, but now a lot of youth are here because basically they can't afford a home.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that's been talking about how to eliminate the red tape, get rid of the sales tax on new homes, sell off federal land to build those homes, train up the trades to build them, so that we can bring back that promise that anyone who works hard gets a beautiful house.
Yeah.
So I think that resonated with your niece and with Caroline's kids, and so I was very touched by her endorsement. She spoke beautifully, as she always does. She was a very, very impressive woman.
Well, we're going to talk about housing, and we're also going to talk about that generational divide and how you might be able to bridge it. But I do want to get into the meat of the speech today. There was, a couple of things that you talked about. An immediate response to Donald Trump, as well as an after-election response.
Yes.
So drill down on those two things for me.
Well, the immediate response that I think has to come as early as tomorrow morning is counter tariffs targeting American goods we don't need, can make ourselves, or buy elsewhere. So we get the impact on them while minimizing it on us. But we also have to keep people working. There will be particular sectors that might take a hit. We want to make sure that those businesses have the cash they need to keep paying wages, because once they lose their employee, it's very hard to rekindle that bond. It's cheaper for a government to keep people in their jobs than it is to have them lose their jobs, collect EI for a long time while they're searching for a new one. So I've said we need to create a Saving Canadian Jobs Fund. It'll be a loan program targeted specifically to those businesses that are hit. But then after the election, we got to figure out how to solve this, because this insanity cannot go on. So what I'm proposing is this: the CUSMA deal, the trade deal we have now, it has to be renegotiated by the end of 2026, by summer of 2026. Why would we wait?
Yeah.
Why would we have this kind of revolving chaos for another year and a half? Let's nail down a deal.
So the first foray into foreign affairs by you go right down there.
I call up the president and say, look, suspend tariffs both ways, and let's set a tight deadline to renegotiate the deal on both economics and security. The deal would do three things as far as I'm concerned. One, it has to maintain our sovereignty. We're going to control our country, our dollar, our laws, our healthcare, our water, all of that. Secondly, we need tariff-free access to the American market, which we should grant in return. And third, we should do our part on national defense. And the Americans, on this point, they're not wrong to say that Canada needs to rebuild its armed forces. And I'm going to say to the Americans, the more you trade with us, the more money we will have for our military. We'll do our part. You will not have to carry our weight on defense. And that's how we nail down a deal that can put this insanity to rest and bring calm and growth and strength to our country.
Safety on our streets has been something you've been talking about, not just during this campaign, but for years. Really, the Toronto Police Association penned a letter, not just to you, but to Mark Carney, about 4 issues that they want to know your positions on. 2 of those issues are bail reform and ending the handgun ban to redirect resources to frontline police workers. What do you say to the questions that they have levied at both of you?
Well, the police know what they're talking about. The Toronto Police have first said that the Liberal catch and release bail law, C-75, which requires judges to release offenders at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions, and I'm quoting, have caused chaos everywhere. The same repeat offenders are released within hours of their latest arrest, often before the paperwork is done, and then they reoffend. They're literally arrested 3 times in a day. So I will repeal Liberal catch and release. I will end Liberal house arrest laws, and I will pass a law that says any repeat offender will be ineligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail, jail, not bail.
But we also have to build more jails, right?
No, actually, the funny thing is, when Harper brought in a major crime package with tougher laws, everyone said, oh, you're going to need massive California-style prisons. Turned out incarceration rates went down. Now, why is that? One, the people we locked up for good were people that were in and out weekly anyway, because they were released to go and reoffend, then they go back in, and then they're released, and then they go back in through the revolving door. You have to reserve them a room. It's like the Hotel California. They check out, but they never really leave. So you're actually not adding a new prisoner, you're just keeping them there. The second thing is you deter crime. The small-time offenders say, I'm not going to risk going to the slammer for 10 years. I'm not going to do the crime in the first place. So we actually brought crime down by 25% and reduced overall incarcerations by focusing on, we don't have a lot of criminals in Canada. The problem is they're very productive. In Vancouver, they had to arrest the same 40 offenders 6,000 times. So you just take those 40 guys off the street, you have 6,000 fewer crimes. But I'll tell you, after the lost Liberal decade of rising crime and chaos, of hug a thug, catch and release, we can't give the Liberals a 4th term. What we need is a new Conservative government that will put law-abiding Canadians first for a change.
Now, if Canadians were to give him a 4th term, Mark Carney has laid out a housing plan. I haven't heard you talk about his housing plan, but clearly it's something you've thought about.
Well, it's a lot like the last Liberal housing plan. Over the last Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled. They've gone up faster in Canada than any other country in the G7. Toronto and Vancouver are now the most expensive markets in all of North America after the lost Liberal decade. It takes 29 years to save up for a down payment in Toronto after 10 years of Liberal government. And now Carney is doubling down on Trudeau's plan, which is to build these monstrosities, these incredible bureaucracies in Ottawa. So he says he wants a $35 billion government housing corporation that's going to build tiny prefab homes with no driveways, because of course they don't want anybody driving cars. And we know the money will go to building bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy. You know, after the lost Liberal decade of doubling housing costs, we can't give Liberals a fourth term. We need a change. And the change I offer is this: let's axe the GST, the sales tax, on new homes. Let's incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development charges. Let's sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build. Let's train up 350,000 trades workers who will build the homes. And let's cut income tax by 15% so that people can afford their main mortgage payments. That is a real plan for a change and to bring homes you can afford.
I was earlier on in the campaign. I was sort of struck by how many endorsements you were getting from blue collar workers and unions, and then it occurred to me, well, if you support the trades and you also support all the work that is going to put the trades to work, then that's a great formula to get them behind you. And one of those sort of massive projects would undoubtedly be pipelines and energy corridors across this country. And one of the differentiators that I'm now seeing since yesterday between the two campaigns is, position on Bill C-69, with Mark Carney yesterday saying he would not repeal it. He did tell Danielle Smith that he said something privately that was different. He swears he wants to ramp up resource development. Do you think he's trying to cater to everybody? And what's your plan to expand the development of those industries, knowing that it's not all up to you?
Well, in the lost Liberal decade, they have killed $178 billion worth of resource projects. 2 major pipelines, one that would have gone west to east to get around America. They've killed 15 massive natural gas export plants that would have allowed us to take billions of dollars of our gas overseas rather than giving it to the Americans at a discount. And all of that is because of Liberal Bill C-69. They call it the No New Pipelines Law, but it will make sure that no new mines, nuclear plants, LNG export plants will ever be approved again. We will never have a national pipeline to go around the Americans. We will have to I'll give them all our energy at a discount. And Mr. Carney said very clearly he will keep the ban on pipelines. He was very direct, finally. And so there's the choice, folks. Do you want to continue to give your energy cheap to Donald Trump, keep our economy weak and reliant on the Americans, or do you want to take back control of our economic future? My Canada First plan will repeal C-69, bring in a new law that requires that we approve projects within 6 months, bring in shovel-ready zones. These are zones that have pre-permits before there's even an application for pipelines, mines, data centers, LNG plants, nuclear power stations, and other infrastructure that break our dependence on the Americans. And this is the choice in the election. After a lost Liberal decade, where the Americans dominate our resource market, are we going to give them a fourth term, or do we want to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will unleash our resources, bring home our jobs, so we can stand up to the Americans from a place of strength?
I have talked to a number of people where I said, hey, why, with Mark Carney, he's had some long-held beliefs on climate change, and then only to turn around and reduce the carbon tax to zero. I said, what does that say to you about his values? And they say, no, that's not a problem. We view that as pragmatism. And I have a tough time pushing back on that. If that's how they see it, that's how they see it. How do you see it?
Well, what if pragmatism means that he raises the carbon tax back up after the election?
That's what he intends to do.
His criticism of the carbon tax up until about a year ago was that it was not high enough. And he has gone on to say that he wants to keep the industrial...
So Pierre said it. Up until a year ago, Mark Carney's criticism on carbon tax was that it wasn't high enough. Pierre said this is one of the oldest tricks in the books that politicians do, where let's just say while they're running and they're promoting, while they're rallying, they'll say that they'll cut this tax, and then right after the election and they win, they bring the tax back, and they bring it back even harder than what they meant for it to be initially. So that's another thing that Canada has to watch out for, because Mark Carney, he does support the carbon tax, and he has spoke about it. And Pierre has went on record to say that this will probably bankrupt Canada if it's something that's put into place.
Carbon tax, which will drive our steel, aluminum, fertilizer, cement, concrete production south of the border where there is no carbon tax. You don't think that that tax is going to be passed on to you at a higher cost for a car? Steel goes in cars. You don't think it will cost more to rent an apartment when all of the concrete in those apartments is taxed at a higher level? And what about the people who work in those jobs? They won't be able to keep them. You know, this is an area where Mr. Trump and Mr. Carney agree. Trump, they both want to tax Canadian industry. Carney with a carbon tax, Trump with tariffs. I want neither.
Yeah.
I will axe the entire carbon tax for everything, for everybody, for real, for good, and for a change.
We got kind of this generational chasm that seems to exist right now. If polling is to be believed, then older voters support Mark Carney, and they think that the ballot box issue that trumps everything else is the president. How do you break through them?
Well, a couple of things. First, I would say look at the lives that your kids are living. You know, my parents were able to afford a home on a teacher's salary. This generation, our generation now, here in Toronto, it takes 29 years to save up for a down payment after the lost Liberal decade doubled the costs. Think about the crime and the chaos that's overtaking our streets after the lost Liberal decade. Think about the rising food prices that you're paying after 3 consecutive Liberal terms. We need a change in this country. And as for Donald Trump, Mark Carney wants to continue with the same Liberal policies that gave us the worst growth in the G7, that pushed $500 billion of our investment south of the border, that gave our resources to Trump on a discount. If you want to reverse that, then we need a change with a new conservative government that will put Canada first, to unleash our resource production. We have to take back our streets by locking up the criminals. We have to cut taxes so that our seniors can keep more of their pensions and retirement income. That's what it means to put Canada first, and that's my pitch to older voters, wiser voters.
I can't go on to Twitter, Pierre, and say anything about this election without an army of people coming at me, attacking you for security clearance issues. Can I get you on the record so I don't have to do it anymore? Explain once and for all the situation with your security clearance.
Well, first of all, I've already had the clearance. I was a minister in a cabinet, so I've already been cleared. Secondly, what the Liberals have been trying to get me to do is sign an oath of secrecy so that I can't speak publicly about foreign interference without their permission, to get locked in to an oath of confidentiality, so that when an issue of foreign interference comes up, I have to risk criminal prosecution if I say something the government considers that it has briefed me on, even if I might have said it anyway. And the other day, example, I had to speak out because a Liberal candidate had said that he wanted to turn over a Conservative candidate on a bounty to the Chinese embassy, which would then send him back to China and potentially imprison or kill him. And I talked about how Mr. Carney, for example, took a $250 million loan from the Chinese government for his company just 6 months ago. Would that kind of comment have been captured by the confidentiality rules that go around getting these security clearance briefings? It might be, but the reality is I will get the briefings I need when I'm Prime Minister to protect our country against foreign interference, but I will not be silenced or gagged in the meantime.
We talked about East-West divide, we talked English-French, we talked about rich and poor and old and young, but I want to talk about urban and rural, because there are 18 ridings in this country with the word center in the title. And currently...
That's a good piece of trivia.
Well, currently, here's another one. Currently, the Conservatives only control one.
Really?
Yeah, so how do conservative policies, how do you tweak them, or how do you deliver them so that they resonate with downtown urban dwellers?
I think it's the cost of living. It's cost and crime. You know, Liberals have driven up both in the last 10 years. But let's start with costs. urban dwellers are often hit extra hard by inflation because they tend to be renters. And higher rent has gone up by about 100% in the last decade. So that's why we need a new conservative government that will unleash home building, reduce taxes so that we can get more apartments that people can afford to rent. We need to stop the inflationary spending so that our city downtown residents can afford groceries again. And we want them to be able to walk to the grocery store without looking over their shoulder or worrying that they're going to be robbed. And so that we need to stop the crime. And we will be we'll do the biggest crackdown on crime in Canadian history when I'm Prime Minister. By locking up the most serious offenders, we're going to put fentanyl kingpins in prison for life so they stop killing our people. We're going to secure our borders with high-powered scanners and watchtowers so that we can intercept the guns that are responsible for 90 or 85% of the gun violence that often afflicts inner city communities. That's how we're going to bring safety back to our country. So, after 10 years of rising costs and crime, the question is, do we want Liberals to have a fourth term? Or do you think it's time to put hardworking downtown Canadians, the people who are trying to slug it out in these expensive and often dangerous inner cities, we want to put them first, and I think we do.
I only have a couple of minutes left. I want to get to at least 2 more questions.
Yeah.
One of the criticisms that we hear here is not about policy. A lot of Canadians are behind the vision and the policy. They tend to complain about tone. The tone of the campaign or the tone of speeches. How do you set about changing someone's mind when it seems like they already agree with a big chunk of it?
I think it's a fair question. I'm very passionate about what I believe in. I do get frustrated with what is happening to our people. When I meet young people who can't afford a home, or I meet an elderly couple that say they're choosing between their grocery budget and their heating bill, it upsets me because I know it's so unnecessary. And so sometimes that can come out as hostility, but what it is really frustration for the fact that our politicians have caused these problems. And what I'm going to do for the closing 3.5 weeks of this campaign is focus on a hopeful solution. And so my message to that elderly couple who's choosing between eating and eating is that hope is on the way. To the single mom who's going to bed hungry and wondering how she's going to feed her kids in the morning, hope is on the way for her too. To the grieving family who have lost a child to an opioid overdose, that death was not in vain. We're going to save other lives. That's the hopeful, optimistic message that I think we need to share so that people know why I'm in this.
Lastly, Pierre, why do you want to become Prime Minister? What does it mean to you?
I want to bring back what I call the Canadian promise. We have something in this country, it's a deal. It's a deal that the country made with me, and it made with all of us. It made with your dad when he was born, a poor Irish kid in Baie-Comeau to an electrician father. It's that anybody who works hard gets a great life and do anything they want. Beautiful house, on a safe street, good food, under a proud flag. That promise has been broken over the last 10 years. And the promise was made to me. I was the adopted son of 2 school teachers. It was made to my wife, who came here as a refugee and has succeeded. My family owes this country everything. And I think the way I can give back is to restore that promise.
I've been in conversation with Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Pierre, thank you so much. Anna, thank you for coming in as well. And we wish you good luck on the campaign.
Great to be with you. Many blessings.
And thanks again for joining us on the Ben Mulroney Show. I will post the podcast for those of you who missed it, and we will see you tomorrow.
Acid reflux, poor circulate.
Right, so I'm going to put that right there. And then we're going to move over to the final clip by Cliff Buell. So Cliff, I usually end the live stream with a clip from Cliff every night, guys. If it's not from Cliff, it's usually from another YouTube content creator that focuses on Christian content. So on this clip, mega church pastor gives away $50,000, but that's not all. So we're gonna go through this whole clip instead of it just being a YouTube short. He did this 7 days ago, so shout out to you, Cliff, for that. So let's watch.
What is going on? My name is Cliff Buell. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not new here, welcome back. We are going to be diving into viral pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell from 2819 Church. He gives away $50,000, spoiler alert. But I'm going to look at two clips because in the next service right after it, he does something I'd say equally as crazy. So we're going to check both of those things out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I've been to many churches. I've grown up in church, many different denominations of churches. Both of these things he does here, I've never seen done from the pulpit in the way that they're being done here. And yeah, it's just crazy. It's a beautiful thing the way that they're working. To give you a little bit of context, if you're not familiar with the church, Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell has been preaching for like 12 to 15 years, I think. Recently gained virality, has blown up, become a mega church, preaches the solid truth, a true gospel preaching of the word of God. I don't watch his sermons, but from what I've heard from him, I've not heard anything I disagree with. Sure, there's probably something, but he preaches from the word of God, truly, has a heart for the Lord, amazing testimony. And yeah, he's just been catching virality, and I really believe the Lord has been blessing them. They were getting kicked out of their building they're in. It was like a fire marshal issue, and the Lord provided them to be able to build a new building, and it's just a beautiful thing. So this sermon is actually their finale in the building there, and this is the last sermon they're doing in this building. And we're going to be looking at their 10 a.m. service is what this $50,000 giveaway happens in, and then we'll look at the 12:45 service right afterwards, what happens. And it's just crazy. So he's at a moment here where he's addressing any digital disciples in the room, meaning anyone who watches their church online who has come in person, and a few different people from a few different places. But then he gets to this person, and I'll let you see what happens here.
Knowing what we have with Church Mutual, that gives me a lot of peace. You don't feel like they're just upselling you, but they really are protecting you. So I sleep pretty easy on those nights where weather can come through. I don't want anything to happen. Believing nothing will, but if it does, it's nice to know that you got someone that understands and that will be responsive should anything happen.
I mean, where? You came from West Coast Canada.
So they're in Atlanta, Georgia. I forgot to say that. They're in Atlanta, Georgia. This person came from West Coast Canada. So if you're good with geography, that's quite a bit of distance.
You drove from Canada? Oh my. What? How many? With the baby?
With the baby.
Oh my. He drove from West Coast Canada with a baby?
Love to see it.
Yo, my man, come here. Yo, come here. Yo, come here.
This is cool. I love that in the moment, he just calls them forward to like honor them, and yeah, just watch what happens. It's crazy.
How long is that drive? Huh? 40 what? 44 hours? 3 days? Yo, my man, come on here. 7 days?
Wow.
You drove 7 days to get here.
Wow.
What? We emailed y'all. You moved here? To come to the church. You moved here to join this church? We sold everything.
Wow.
You sold everything.
That's crazy. How many people now are willing to sell all of their stuff to move and relocate And obviously, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes here, if the Lord told them to do that or what's going on, but that is a bold step of faith. Obviously, the church isn't what saves you, but we are called to be in a body. We are called to be in specific, sometimes geographic locations. And so I love that this man said, you know, my family, we're just going to sell it all and take a step of faith and go into this new place, this new church. And wow, it's just powerful. A long distance too, like a long distance, no turning back. Like we're all in. Love it. But watch.
You sold everything to come in. You moved from Canada to come in.
2 girls and 2
With
dogs.
2 girls
And 2 dogs.
and 2 dogs.
A 7-day trip with 2 girls. One of them's a baby and 2 dogs. Like, no wonder it took him 7 days for 44 hours because, bruh, I can't imagine. That's an intense road trip.
You sold everything.
Yes, sir.
What's your name?
Holden.
Holden.
Shelby.
Shelby and Holden. All right. No, hold on. No, where's Don? Write his name down. Sheldon and Holden. Holden and Shelby.
People do that.
Okay. I want you to stay when this is over. We're gonna give out 2 checks today, $50,000 for you. Yes. No, yes. 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 No, yes. No. Yes. No. Don't block my blessing. No, don't block my blessing.
All right. Come on, somebody. To me, I've seen this. This is my 3rd time seeing this. The first 2 times I literally almost cried because this is like, it's just so beautiful. I don't think this is a publicity stunt. I honestly, he pauses. I like, in both the clips, you'll notice Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell pauses and really spends some time before he speaks on what he's going to do. And in my opinion, I believe he's really like just trying to abide from what the Holy Spirit is telling him to do. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me. And then just saying like, you know, we're going to bless this man right now for taking this step of faith. And obviously this is a financial blessing, but listen to the next exchange of dialogue that happens here because this is beautiful. It just really is.
Don't block my blessing. 50,000 for you. No. Give you a job. I'm giving you a check. No. You can't block my blessing, no.
I love that too. I love that you keep saying you can't block my blessing because we do that to people. There's a lesson in that. If someone wants to bless you, obviously we want to be humble. You know, it's not like we're trying to be entitled to these blessings, but you don't want to block someone else's blessing. There is a lesson in that, but yeah, I just love it. He's being humble. He's like, let me just work. You know, let me get a job. Like that's what I want. I'll work for it. But you know, nah. Listen, just listen.
You want the spiritual money. We're going to give you both. We're going to find a job for you right here in 2819.
Love it. This is the body. This is the body right here. So he ends up praying for them. It's really cool. Just powerful prayer. If you guys obviously want to watch it, you can see. Find this on their church website. I could put the link in the description too. But just a powerful encounter. Now, immediately when I watched this, I was thinking about in Acts where it says they had all things in common and kind of like people would just put their possessions together. And kind of this is the point of the body of Christ is to do exactly that, is to just kind of come together, be able to bless. You know, the church is, that's one of the reasons for the church is to help the body. And so when someone takes a huge step of faith like that, like selling everything, and it's like, okay, we can just financially bless them to get them on their feet, to get them started, to buy a house, to do whatever it is they need to do. And then of course he's also offering him a job so that he can sustain that. But those were the verses that were coming to mind for me. And what's crazy is that's the same scenario that you'll hear kind of what happens here. So now Watch this. Now, before we get to that next clip, you may be a part of a church like 2019, or you may not be. Now, I do believe the Bible is very clear about community and that we need to be in a physical body, but digital community is also a great added bonus, and that is why I always talk about Tulu. That is the digital community that I'm a part of, and that I highly encourage other believers to check out. You can try it for free for 30 days, no risk. And there's no ads, there's no spam, no inappropriate content, no occult content. It is so safe and it is strictly for Christians. It's made by Christians for Christians. It is a beautiful place. You can join my group chat. We pray for each other. We just hang out and talk Christian related things. And you can post really what matters to you on Tubu without worrying about everything else that's going on these toxic platforms. It's not made to strictly be a social media platform, but it is one in a lot of ways. But it is made to be a community platform. And so the community there is truly a beautiful thing. I would love to see you over there. The link is in the description. Try it out. Same thing. He's addressing digital disciples in the room. This is just the next service after. And I actually found this one by accident. The other one was going viral. I found this one by accident. I can't believe this one isn't going viral too. And this woman stands up to say, I think she's from Indiana, and she's a single mom, and just watch what happens.
Made from quality materials and designed to resist the elements. Our timeless and trending pieces will keep.
Yeah. Yes. You're a single mom? You relocate, well, hold on, I can't hear, hold on, I can't hear. You're a single mom, and you relocated here from Indiana, you can't.
Can't really hear what you're saying, but he calls it forward.
Stand right here. Stand right here. You're a single mom. I'm a single mom. All right, wait, hold on.
This is what I'm talking about, where he pauses. He's taking a moment. He's not just reacting. He called her forward, and then it's like, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me.
You're a single mom. Oh, you don't have to do this. I want every man, and if you feel like a woman, empty your pockets and bring all the cash you have and lay it right here on this altar.
I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Obviously, I've heard people take like offerings from people, so I guess you could say essentially the same thing. At a different
church, I've seen
but he just has everyone come up. He's just like, put the cash down, like we're taking care of her. But just watch how this plays out. It's pretty cool.
Give me all.
So initially, what he says is he asks us again. He says, "You're a single mother," and she says, "Yes." She's a single mother of 6, and she relocated from Indiana to where 2819 is, which that's in Atlanta, Georgia. So he initially says every man, and then he says if you feel like it, every woman, and then he says empty your pockets and bring the cash to the front. And initially that's going to be used as a donation to help this woman out. So I have seen this at a church before. Pastor John Gray actually did this at his church before, and there were 2 other pastors. I just can't remember. I can't remember their names right now, but I know Pastor John Gray, he's in South Carolina. One pastor I think was out west, and another pastor I believe was further down south as well. But I have seen this happen in the church time and time again. Acts 2, it's a very familiar passage to those Christians that know it. Specifically to the church about bringing offerings to the church. And everyone had what they needed. So this is pretty common to see in churches that are very generous and very giving. So, I mean, Pastor Philip Anthony, he's been doing this before his clips have gone viral. I think a special thing that the Lord has done for me personally is I've gotten a chance to watch a lot of people during their season of obscurity. So possibly they were in the middle of it, coming out of it. But I've seen a lot of people in those seasons to where I would be watching a pastor who I literally thought was just phenomenal, just like a beast of a pastor in a great way. And I would go to my local church and I would say, online I was watching Pastor such and such and he was preaching about this, and they would say, Pastor who? And I would repeat the name, and they legitimately would not know this person's name. I know right now, like I'm gonna say this pastor's name and everyone's gonna know who it is, but there was legitimately a time where I could go to my local church, and if it wasn't my local church, it was a church within, let's just say, 10-mile radius at most, so within a decent proximity of me, and I could say Pastor Michael Todd's name, and people literally would not know who he was. Like, they would be like, who is that? Like, Pastor Mike Todd, what church does he preach at? Is he in Delaware? Where is he at? Is he in Pennsylvania? Is he in New Jersey? Is he in Maryland? Is he in Virginia? Like, they would always think, because I live relatively close to all of those states, so they would always think, like, is he in any of those states? And I would just say to myself, no, he's actually in Oklahoma, you know, and no one would know who he was. Whereas today, you can say Pastor Mike Todd's name, and almost everyone has not just some type of knowledge about at least who he is topically or superficially, but they also have some type of opinion about him, right? So I've been able to see this with a lot of different pastors, and Pastor Philip Anthony has been one of them. You know, I remember watching his sermons a year, 2 years ago, and the things he was preaching on, and how people were saying, like, sometimes they were confused because of his level of passion when he preaches. But I've always liked him. My mom actually likes Pastor Philip Anthony, so I think he's a great pastor. This is something that he does. He was doing before the spotlight was on him, just like at Transformation Church. Pastor Mike Todd, same thing. He was giving before and recording, like having it on his lives, him giving to people, especially visitors that will come to the church, long before people knew who Pastor Mike Todd was. It definitely, I definitely saw it like shortly after relationship goals like took off. But even before that, like visitors would come to the church, or if you got invited to Transformation Church via guests, like Pastor Mike Todd would be giving away like Bluetooth wireless headphones, gift card, date night packages. Like, he always did that. So like when he got a bigger platform, and you know, he made it publicized, I just thought it was crazy the level of scrutiny he got. But I guess I wasn't that shocked by it, but it was just distasteful.
All the cash you have, this ain't prosperity. This is called Acts 2:42-47. They share all things in common. Bring all your cash and lay it right here. Just empty your pockets. And somebody get a basket, or go give me a bag from the lobby. Give me a bag from the lobby for that. Give me a bag from the lobby. Just lay everything right here. Just lay it here. Just whatever cash you have, just lay it right here.
Wow. All right, so
Empty your pockets. Just lay it right here.
see if I can find it.
No, tell the overflow they can stay in the room. If they came from the overflow, tell them they can stay in the room. They can sit on the floor. It don't matter. The fire marshal can't kick us out. It's the last day. Tell everybody from the overflow to come over here. It don't matter. I don't care. Everybody from the overflow, they can come and sit on the floor. They can come and stay in the room. They can stay in the room and sit on the floor. We're about to be done in 10 minutes anyway. I don't care. The fire marshal can't kick us out now.
So you saw that guy pointing? But just wait.
It's the last day. I don't care about no. Tell everybody in the overflow they can come in here and sit on the floor.
You see that?
What if one pair of shorts could keep up with every goal that you're chasing in the new year? Have you tried to be always goal short? Whether I'm hitting a run, powering through a workout, or just enjoying a sunny day outside, these shorts are my go-to. They're lightweight, breathable, and have that perfect balance of comfort and performance. That stretchy fabric.
No one cares.
Wait.
One man put this here. One brother put this here. One brother dropped $1,000 right here.
Come on. All right, I went back a little bit. This is where he addresses the scripture portion of this. I wanted you to see.
Wow. This is called Acts 2:42-47. And they shared all things in common. Took care of orphans and widows.
So that right there, in Acts, they talk about sharing all things in common. Everyone kind of put their possessions together. And then in multiple, I think, places in the Bible, but James, I know it talks about taking care of like orphans and widows. I think later in Acts, it talks about widows as well. But there's definitely an emphasis on like taking care of widows, taking care of orphans throughout Scripture. And so you see this single mom, come all the way here to come to this church, and that just bless her tremendously. You know, a financial blessing is not just about prosperity. It's truly about, you know, meeting the needs of the people in the body of Christ. And so seeing a church that is actively willing to do this, you know, to be able to write, they have the capability to be able to write $50,000 checks. In the last one, I don't think I showed it in the video, but it actually says it's their second check. And he, I think, said something about two $50,000 checks at one point. So like they're writing large checks to bless people and help people, and then to have the entire congregation and body come up to be able to sow into this single mother is just a beautiful thing, man. And I wish we saw more of that in the church. We see a lot of stinginess, in just a general sense. Like, Christians should be the most generous. I think we are the most generous, but we should be. And we should be willing to bless our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. And I just love seeing this. It's such a beautiful thing. Let me know what you guys think about this. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. Hit the like button so this can get pushed out to more people. So grateful for you to join.
That is Cliff Buell, ladies and gentlemen. So
Ever wondered what your
chance? Go check out Cliff Buell's channel. We react to Cliff pretty much every single night here. If it's not Cliff, it's usually another YouTube Christian content creator, because I try to end my live streams with that. So he streamed this 11 days ago, our Christian video games thing. So we'll probably take a look at that tomorrow. I'm not going to take a look at that tonight. We're going to end the live stream tonight. Yeah, late night, this Friday night, probably the latest I've got on. This is probably a record breaker for me. But like I always tell you guys, if I have things to do throughout the day, I have a family, I'm going to take care of that. I always have a schedule, but I do not have a large team, right? It's just pretty much me. And yeah, and I got my family. So when I have things to do, I have things to do. But I am a person of my word. Where's my thing at? I am very committed when I am committed to a process. And yeah, I do my best to be obedient when the Lord calls me to do something. So this is the season that I'm in, guys. So I will be here every single day except Sunday. You know, it was late tonight. It won't be late Saturday. I will jump on here around 1300, which is 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And then we'll be off Sunday and we'll be back Monday. And I'm pretty sure after looking at my analytics, because this has been pretty much like a 2-week crash course for me. So anybody who jumps on my lives every day knows this stuff, and they'll hear me talk about it pretty often. Like, I have a decent amount of returning viewers. So a good amount of people already know I've been crash coursing the last 2 weeks with my analytics about the best time to get on. I have a very flexible daytime job, which is thanks to God for that. So, and flexibility is a priority for me, right? So work-life balance and flexibility are two huge things for me. If those things are not present where I'm working, I probably wouldn't be working there. So at the end of the day, this is why sometimes you guys can see me jump on here and live stream at like 11 a.m. or noon or 1 p.m. And then sometimes I'm on 4 or 5 if the day is really busy. But I prefer to get it done earlier. It seems like my sweet spot is around 4 p.m. Really, I could say anywhere from 1500 to 1630. So that would be 3 p.m. to 4:30. So it looks like that's where I'm going to land starting this next week. And I asked you guys to just bear with me as I crash coursed it, because it would look like me being on at different times. And believe me, it affects me too. I know some of you guys are like, man, Q, why can't you just get on at this time every day? I'm going to, but I had to crash course the analytics and figure out like where my sweet spot was at. Yeah, so with that being said, I'm also led, and this is what the Lord just kind of told me to figure it out in that way. You know, yeah, every day I could be like, what time should I go on, Lord? But there's also things that we got to be practical, and sometimes as Christians, we don't think we have any work to do. So after doing that, I've pretty much figured out a sweet spot for me at this point. So that's pretty much what you guys will see next week, starting next week and going forward. Like throughout the rest of the channel, as long as we're doing this type of content. So we'll be back tomorrow, guys. Daily live stream Saturday. It'll be April 5th. It already is. So I will see you guys in a couple of hours. So be safe, guys. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Love yourselves. Love one another. And I will see you soon. Peace.